there were a lot of people struggling with eating disorders, and it was hard.
All right, well, Holly, welcome.
Thank you so
good
much.
to see you in person.
You too, yeah.
I feel like every time we talked, it was over Zoom, so
Totally.
it's great to have you here. And congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Lethally Blonde.
Yeah.
I mean, I love this new avenue that you're kind of going down. And what really sparked your interest in this?
I love telling true stories. I've always been a fan of the true crime genre ever since I was a little girl watching Unsolved Mysteries. And the first series I did, the Playboy Murders, was brought to me, and I was so surprised by the cases they chose. I hadn't heard of a lot of the cases, and I thought this is a show I would watch.
Yeah.
So I love being part of a show I would actually watch.
I know.
This one was so interesting to me for so many different levels. It involves a woman who was an OnlyFans model. I was an OnlyFans model for a little bit, so I could relate to that. It involved a relationship with a history of domestic abuse. It involved a lot of security camera footage, a lot of things like that are just fascinating. And it's still current, it's still going on. You know, she hasn't been sentenced yet, and her parents were recently taken into custody for allegedly tampering with evidence. So it's a very compelling case. I would love it if people walked away from the show with a feeling of empathy toward the victims, understanding the victims more. And when it comes to the people involved who are like involved in kind of the sex work industry or on the fringes of that, I'd like them to see more of who that person is. That's always what I try to do with the storytelling, is do a more well-rounded portrait of who was that person besides that one flashy headline that gets everybody interested in the first place. So I hope that's what people walk away with.
Yeah, well, and I mean, obviously you come from, you know, the Playboy world and things like that. Did you ever fear for your safety when it comes to, you know, overzealous fans or things like that? Did that ever happen to you at all?
I had a couple stalkery experiences when I was doing a show in Las Vegas after I lived in the mansion. So safety's always been a huge concern of mine, especially now that I'm a mom. I'm always setting the alarms and checking every door and window, making sure it's bolted shut at night and things like that. So it's definitely on my mind for sure.
What story did you not relate to the most, or what story did you kind of gravitate towards the most with the series?
I think our season finale about Annika DiLorenzo, she was a Penthouse Pet of the Year, and she went through a lot of bad things at that company. She filed a lawsuit against Bob Guccione, which she won, but then was later reversed, and he did kind of a creepy, in my opinion, revenge porny type of thing against her. And then she was later found dead under very mysterious circumstances, and it's still unsolved. So that one really hit me. Are
you hoping to get more into those unsolved crimes, and hopefully maybe that it kind of bridges the gap and maybe solve some of these murder mysteries going forward?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's every true crime producer's dream, is to maybe help something come forward by telling these stories.
Definitely. I love that. Like I said, I love this avenue for you. I think it's really, really fantastic. Did you feel like, coming off of Playboy and things like that, do you feel like you really had to work extra hard to prove yourself that you were capable of doing other things like executive producing shows like this?
In a way, yeah. I feel like, I mean, it's definitely given me a platform that I've been able to use in a lot of great ways. But people are always looking for any reason to like underestimate other humans or feel like they're superior to other humans. So that was always kind of the thing they would pick for me. It was like the Playboy connection, or the fact that I was dating somebody older than me or something. You know, I think I've gotten through it pretty well.
Yeah, no, totally. What would you say is probably now maybe one of the biggest misconceptions about you?
Biggest misconception? I don't know. I'm so kind of done being bothered by them that I don't pay too much attention. I mean, one I get recently, like, this is niche, but I get it a lot, is when I talk about my experience at the mansion, people are always like, well, why are you only talking now after he's dead? And I'm like, I didn't. I wrote my book when he was alive. For some, that's a big one I get a lot. So it's just people are uninformed.
Yeah. What are you hoping is the next step in executive producing and things like that? Do you want to continue down the true crime path? Or are you hoping to bridge, kind of branch out into other avenues as well?
I love to do more of the same. I love telling these stories. There's so many stories out there, and I loved working on it so far.
Is there one story in particular that you really want to dive into?
Probably. I can't think off the top of my head now. I was just telling Debbie something about, a family member of a victim of a crime who reached out to me, and so maybe we can do something with that.
Right. Is there like a warning that you would give, or advice that you would give to these social media stars that are coming forward, whether it be on OnlyFans or these up-and-coming models and things like that? Is there like a warning that you would give them, especially in today's day and age with social media and OnlyFans and things like that being so rampant? what advice would you give them?
Oh, I always say, be safe, take your privacy into utmost consideration. Try not to post things on your story in real time so people can find you. Try not to give too many clues where you live. Sometimes that's hard because people are detectives.
Sure.
I say don't post your kids too much online. Like I'm always really careful, like not to post my kids unless it's like the back of their heads or like their hand or something. And I would say that for anybody, like you don't have to be in the public eye or have an online following. Like you never know who's looking, so be really careful, make a private account if there's stuff you really need to post that you think not everybody should see.
Yeah, was that why you decided not to show your kids' face anymore for safety reasons? Because I know you did a while ago and now you decided not to anymore. So was that a reason why?
It was one of the reasons for sure. When they were babies, I would post pictures of them, but when they got about preschool age and they're kind of like out in the world a little bit, it just didn't feel good. It didn't feel like the right choice for me. I wanted to keep them really private. And on top of that, kids can't consent to being showcased online. So I want to give them the choice to be out in the public later if they want.
What's the biggest mom challenge you're facing at the moment?
Well, my daughter's 11, so I know she's not going to be a little kid that much longer. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what that looks like. But she's a good girl. So.
Yeah. What scares you the most about those teenage years that are knocking on the door?
Hopefully her dad and I have done a good job, keeping her grounded so far. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. What's your key to co-parenting then?
I'm just really lucky because I have a decent partner who cares about the kids. People ask me for advice all the time, and I'm just lucky because we both want to do what's best for the kids, and we have really good communication. I don't know what I would do if I was trying to co-parent with somebody who was petty or trying to use the kids as a power play. I just sympathize for people having to deal with that.
No, definitely. I couldn't imagine. And then the kids suffer, and it's really all about the children. Sure. Yeah. Do your kids do they know what you do? And have you had conversations about your career and things like that?
Not too in depth. They know I do a podcast. They know I do YouTube, but they don't know what the content is. I just tell them it's so boring. They don't.
Have you thought about how you will have those conversations going forward in the future?
No, because with parenting, you can be as prepared as you want. You can read all the books. You just never know what's really going to come down until it comes down. And I'm just going to be like real and candid without going into too much detail, I think is the best plan.
Yeah. Do you think that you'll ever allow them to watch the reality show?
Oh, God. I'm so embarrassed. Not until they're like full adults.
Sure.
I cringe myself watching some of it, but...
Have you been cringing yourself watching back? Because obviously you have the podcast.
Yeah.
It's highly successful. Congratulations. What has that experience been like for you watching back the seasons? Is it cringeworthy? Is it triggering at times? What kind of goes through your mind when you're watching this?
It's all the things. I mean, most of it's fun because I'm doing a podcast with my best friend, and we're also talking about like the good times and stuff we can laugh at now. We have a lot of guests on who were around at that time, and it's fun catching up with those people. But we will get triggered sometimes, and it's never really when we expect. It'll be like every couple episodes something will come up, but that gives us something to talk about.
Sure, definitely. What has been the one thing that really kind of stood out in your mind? You're like, oh, I wasn't expecting, like you said, I wasn't expecting to be triggered by that.
Sometimes it'll be like comments people made on the show that didn't bother me back then because I was just kind of numb to the whole attitude. But I watch it now and I'm like, ew, who would say that?
Yeah, right. You've spoken very openly about body dysmorphia and things like that. And I know a lot of the other Playboy models that have come out of that experience feel like that as well. What do you teach your children about that, knowing what you know and the tools that you have now?
We're really focused on healthy eating. I'm really careful not to say anything about dieting or weight or anything in front of my kids. Like if they're trying to shove something unhealthy in front of me, I just say, oh, I'm doing like a health thing. I try and keep it away from like diet talk and body talk. And especially with our daughter, we've just been really focused on making sure that she values the things she enjoys and that she's passionate about, whether it's surfing or horses or even Roblox. Like I don't care as long as it's not something that's, so far she hasn't kind of gone into this mode, but we don't want her to get into the mode where she's really focused on the way she looks or trying to get attention for the way she looks or validation through that. Yeah. And I think we've been really successful so far. She's on a better track than I was at that age, for sure. I was already like trying to look some sort of way when I was 11.
Yeah. So. What is one thing that you wish you could go back and tell yourself on day one of filming Girls Next Door? I
actually would be reassured hearing from myself now because as much as I like to complain about certain things about Girls Next Door, when I went into it, I was so terrified because reality television back in 2005 was very like humiliation based. And I thought that's what they're going to do to us. So all three of us were very scared going into it because we didn't know what to expect. And it turned out to be just like a very lighthearted, you know, funny show. So for the most part, it was better than we thought it would be. So I think I would just be very reassured, and I maybe would have like let my guard down a little bit earlier. No, I would tell myself that they're not going to blur your nudity. That was the big thing, because we thought for sure, because obviously the cameras would follow us as we were doing like our Playboy pictorials and stuff, and we thought, oh, it's going to be on E, so it's just going to be blurred. But we didn't know they were going to like farm that footage out to foreign markets and put it on the DVD. So I think, you know, none of us were prudes. Obviously, we were posing for the magazine, but I think we just would have been more careful, like maybe covered up a little bit more, been in like, you know, better angles, and just been like more tasteful about it than we were. Because season 1, we were just like thinking we were so funny and just running around naked, and then you see that unblurred footage and you're like, haha.
Thanks.
You know,
How do you feel about the magazine today? Because obviously it's changed so much. They denounced, you know, Hugh Hefner a few years back. Well, how do you feel about it today? Do you even pay attention to it anymore?
I don't really know what the brand is. I think it's kind of like OnlyFans now. But I don't believe in like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Just because I had some bad experiences doesn't mean I don't still like love the art that was in Playboy. You know, I worked at the studio for 2 years as the Playmate editor, and I had always wanted to be in Playboy, and I just love the pictorials. I still do. I still think they're so beautiful. I'm still proud of my pictorials. My issues were more like relationship based, or you know, we weren't really treated as fairly as we should have been on the show and things like that. But there are good things too.
Yeah. Would you go back and do it again if not, or would you change anything since it led to you where you are today? Obviously, there's regrets and mistakes and things like that. But if you had the opportunity to go back and do it again,
I wouldn't change anything, because I think I have a really interesting story from it, and I think I managed to turn it into good things. But if I had to actually go back and physically experience it, I don't think so, just because I lived at the mansion for 7 years total, and 4 of those years were before we started the show, and those years were really rough. And I don't think I would even last there now. Like, I'm so much more confident that if I had to go back and do it, I'd probably get kicked out for being insubordinate.
Do you think if the show didn't come along, you would have left sooner?
I don't know. I might not have, because the show actually gave me a lot of confidence, and working at the studio gave me a lot of confidence. So I finally felt strong enough to leave.
Yeah. Did you ever... Go ahead.
I might have just stayed there and rotted if the show hadn't came on. I don't know.
How do you feel about Hugh now?
I mean, I have really mixed feelings. I don't have like a really strong hatred like people probably think I do. It's more just being wise to what he was doing the whole time. Like sometimes I'll watch the show and I'll notice something I didn't notice before, and it'll make me angry all over again. But I think my feelings toward him are probably not what people think.
Yeah. Plans on writing another book?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I maybe one day. Probably not about myself though. I'd probably write like weird fiction under a pen name or something.
Do like true crime fiction or something like that. Yeah.
Maybe.
Did you ever think that you and Bridget would be as close as you were?
Yeah. I mean, we hit it off right away and have always been close just through the years.
Yeah.
We've had a great relationship.
Did you read Crystal's book?
I did.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on that?
I have so many thoughts. I could sit here for an hour. Like eventually, like I'd love to give you a good answer, but like Bridget and I are going to get together and like on our podcast or something, and with some other people are going to really go in depth. But it's such a big thing. I can't really give you a little snippet, unfortunately.
What did you make of her saying that they really tried to create this rivalry between the two of you, and every time, like, you know, you kind of cast a shadow when she was there? What did you kind of make of that when you read that?
Well, I think that's absolutely true. I think the show definitely probably asked her to say certain things that then pissed me off from a distance and things like that. But Crystal and I had connected and been good since. It's just, but she's also done other things, so I don't blame it on the show.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Reading it, was it therapeutic for you at all?
You know,
or eye-opening?
I don't know if it was eye-opening. It was therapeutic in a way, but I don't really know how to put it in words. Like, I really need to dive in and, like, do a deep dive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. You know, you, in December, you opened up about being on the autism spectrum. Why was it important for you to be open about that? And what advice do you have for maybe other people that are being diagnosed later on?
I first started getting into it publicly because I was just talking about, you know, some decisions I'd made in the past and how I think being undiagnosed on the spectrum kind of had a hand in why I would make certain decisions or reason certain things or think certain things. And then I thought, if I'm going to talk about this publicly, I really need to get a real diagnosis and get more educated on it. So I think it's important to talk about because other people can relate. You know, being on the spectrum, it's called a spectrum for a reason. So, you know, I can function pretty well. I have high functioning autism. Not everybody has the same experience. A lot of people struggle a lot more. But I think a lot of people can relate. A lot of people I've communicated with on social media and whatnot, and I see a lot of people on my FYP who are also autistic, and I love hearing from them. So I just love it. I feel like a whole new world has opened for me as far as understanding myself and why I do the things I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like if you had these tools back then, like a lot of your choices and a lot of things you would have done differently?
I think so, absolutely. But I think it would have been harder back then because there was definitely more of a stigma on things like this, and I was always a very like shy, private person, despite wanting to do Playboy, and it would have been harder. We didn't have social media to connect with people that we might not ordinarily find. I think it's so much easier today for people to process this kind of
Definitely. Have you had a lot of people reach out to you, I'm sure?
Oh, yeah. For sure, yeah.
That's great. That's really wonderful. So who are you hoping to have on the podcast soon?
We have some cool interviews in the bank. I would love to talk to, usually we talk to people that are very specific to the show.
Of course.
I'd love to talk to Pamela Anderson, I think, because I'd love to hear what it was like being a playmate in the 90s. I think things were so different back then, and I'd love to talk to her about all of her different pictorials and stuff.
Yeah.
I'd get really specific in her interview. She'd be like, damn, you're reeling it back.
You're going all the way back.
Yeah.
No, I think that's... Did you take anything from the mansion? Do you still have like any like memorabilia or things like that?
I didn't like take anything from the mansion that wasn't mine. I did end up with like some random books because I had like an assistant pack up my stuff. I ended up with some random books that were like signed to have or whatever that I found years later, like after he passed. I didn't mean to take them, but I still have like all my outfits from Girls Next Door because clothing was always such a source of comfort for me during those years. It was the way I expressed myself. It was a fun outlet. So I have all like my party costumes, my dresses, you know, my gowns, my bunny costumes, all the things.
Yeah.
I have a whole archive.
Yeah. What is your best memory from that time for you?
I think my best memory was when we got to go on like girls trips, which was really rare because I wasn't allowed to like be away from the mansion overnight for so long. But as we got into later seasons of the show, you know, he knew we needed content, so he would let us go do things every once in a while. Like we drove up to the Madonna Inn for Bridget's sister's 21st birthday one year, and that was just so fun. It was such a fun getaway with the girls and a great memory.
You know, so many people are so fascinated about what went on behind closed doors and things like that, and the rules and things like that. Was there really like a plastic surgery rule?
No.
Okay.
Wait, what was the rule?
I think that like somebody said, or somebody came forward and said that there was like a plastic surgery rule. Like you had to look a certain way, be a certain way. Was that?
Yeah, well, I think nobody would have gotten in the door as a girlfriend unless they were like thin, blonde, had large breasts. And then I think once you get there, because of the dynamics in the group, you start to feel like you're not good enough. So you're always kind of looking around like, what could be better? And, you know, so a lot of people were getting plastic surgery. I got my nose done when I was there. So there was not like a rule that you had to have plastic surgery. Like Bridget never had any, for example, but a lot of us did, for sure.
And the pipes were changed.
Yes. That is a crazy story.
That is a crazy story.
I just, when I first heard it, I thought, no, people are exaggerating. But then one of the butlers confirmed.
That's crazy. Yeah, because I think that headline went like wild because people were like, I can't believe that actually happened. But I'm sure it's so much pressure being in that environment.
It really is, yeah.
To
there
look
were
and act
a lot of
certain
people
way.
struggling with eating disorders, and it was hard.